All right, the applicant and owner can have a seat there.
Yep. Left, right. I'll let you take the taller seat.
We'll have everyone find a seat in the gallery, face out, just your ability, that's great. Yeah, if you're the last one in, that'd be great. Thanks, Eric. Okay, I'm gonna start letting folks in. Welcome everyone on the zoning hearing. Turkey. Hi, Kelly, are you with us? Kelly, are you with us? Need you to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me now?
And yes, welcome. Just getting folks checked in. Can you hear us okay, Kelly?
Yes, I'm still here, sorry.
John Manster. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and get everyone's name that's present. So Eric from the Hillside Trust. Russo, welcome.
Hi, my name is Joanne Hall, neighboring property.
And you were at the first hearing, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, welcome back.
Thank you.
Linda Ziegler from the Cuff Neighborhood Association.
Thank you. Gentlemen, if you could remind me of your names.
Terrence Mangan, owner.
Jeremy Schlicker.
You're the architect on the
Correct.
project. Right. Mr. John Manster, are you with us here today? Okay. Maybe we'll just be observing. All right. So, Cassandra, we're live.
Yes, we're ready to go.
Great. Are you all anticipating anyone else to be here today?
No.
Okay. All right. Let's get started then. So, I'm gonna begin by reading through our hearing script. I would encourage everyone to keep their masks on, but if you're having any trouble speaking, I think it's fine to pull it down while presenting or talking if you feel comfortable. So I'm first going to go through our hearing script. I'll basically just cover the procedure for the hearing. And then okay. So this is the August 25th, 2021 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the zoning examiner for the city of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is here on continuance from an earlier date. The case number is ZH20210050. This was continued in progress. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and offer impute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. Unless a party is presented as opted to present evidence or submit evidence in the form of writing or digitally prior to this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. Now, this is on a continuance, but we are going to sort of start from the beginning. This, as I understand it, was continued so that there could be more dialogue between the owner and the applicant and community members that were opposed. And so we're just going to start over again, which means that I will allow the applicant's attorney or the applicant's agent to first present the applicant's case or to give me an update on any of those discussions or any changes that were made to the application, if any. After that, I will then give the public an opportunity to speak. And then I'll also give our zoning plans examiner, Walt Mueller, an opportunity to speak. I may call Walt out of order because Walt has a hard stop at 11 o'clock. So I will do my best to make sure that he is able to provide any additional testimony. In the event any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to an application, the applicant should have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offer in opposition. And then after the applicant has been given that opportunity, the applicant will have an opportunity to close the statement. So for all the members of the public here today, you will just have one opportunity to speak. So I'm going to let the applicant provide any updates since our last hearing and any additional comments or testimony that they would like to present. I'll then give each member of the public one opportunity to speak. I'll then give you guys an opportunity to respond to each of their testimony and then make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who is not present at this hearing. In the event of any technical difficulties or unforeseen circumstances with our video conferencing technology, we'll do our best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully continuing with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing. That'll be at my discretion. Okay, the last thing I need to do is swear in all of our witnesses. So, Ms. Ambrosius, if I could ask you to unmute. Anyone that intends on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, anything other than strictly observing, needs to be sworn in here today. So everyone can raise their right hand. I need everyone to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall be able to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, and Ms. Ambrosius, did you have a question?
It's just hard hearing you. You sound a little garbled.
Okay. I'll try it. So this is the microphone.
That's better. That's better, actually.
Try to talk directly into that. Okay.
Thank you.
But please, if you're having trouble hearing anyone, please use the raise hand function, okay? Did you catch that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right. And Cassandra, if you could be a second set of eyes on that. If you hear some trouble with sound or you can't hear anyone, could you please notify us?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and then start. Who's going to be taking the lead here? Okay. Mr. Schlicker.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much. First, I would just like to refer back to our previous presentation. It was very detailed, so I just obviously don't want to spend the entire day going through that. And then just jump right into some updates and a few other comments, be relatively brief. The first item that I would like to note is that we have removed our request for relief on the height of the structure. As submitted for amendment through both written and graphical submission, we have made this consideration and concession through design modifications to material selection and structure height to minimize any complications with other decisions as part of this hearing. This concession ensures that there are no view line issues from any adjacent property, as adjacent property windows are fully above the top elevation of the design, out of horizontal alignment with the proposed design, which is very narrow at only 16 feet wide on the lower level and 8 feet wide on the upper level. Sightlines that are already blocked by existing vegetation therefore have no change in view accessibility. We had in discussions with neighbors check those and also just trying to limit any complications in decision-making. We felt that we could make changes to the design and remove the height request for relief with height. For the reasons just mentioned, and after review of the amended staff report by the zoning department, we believe that the included graphic in the report regarding sightlines is inaccurate in its representation of the actual impact. The second item I'd like to address is the request for relief regarding the front yard setback. We would like to refer back to our previous detailed presentation that substantially illustrated all the benefits gained as well as the issue the design mitigates by placing the home in its proposed location, not in the boundaries determined by the zoning department. Again, referring to our previous presentation, the proposed design fully fits within the Hillside development guidelines through thorough and actual consideration of the guidelines. Contrary to the rote calculations of the code and the location boundaries determined through that code, don't actually consider these guidelines in any way. The arbitrary determination of location will substantially and negatively impact adjacent properties if it's forced to fit within those calculations. As one example of many, a consideration recently brought up by the zoning department is view access. As our previous presentation noted, placing the home in the arbitrary zoning code calculated location will completely remove the view, sunlight, and air access of the north adjacent property, whereas our proposed design fully allows access for all of those to remain. While not a zoning issue, we have had conversations with and other communication with the fire department, as well as the state fire marshal regarding this project. The location of the proposed design reduces fire risk to neighboring properties by increasing the proximity from one structure to the next. The risk of fire moving from one structure to the next would be greatly increased by forcing the home to be moved in between the two very old homes as the zoning department wants. These older homes do not have modern day fire protection and would be highly susceptible to spread. Increasing the proximity distance is the only thing that can fully reduce this risk. Finally, with regard to the front yard setback and the relief sought, we believe that requiring placement of the project in the western half of the site places substantial and unreasonable financial demands on the owner. Through working with the project's geotechnical and structural engineers, we have determined that the project cost would be increased by approximately 150% of the current estimated cost due to substantial stabilization and foundation requirements compared to the minimal requirements of the proposed design. It should be noted that the current estimated costs of the project fit within the current home values of the area. And the last item that I would like to briefly cover is the request for relief with front yard parking. Regardless of and separated from other decisions related to this hearing, we ask that the relief in this area be considered on its own merits. As we have already noted in our previous presentation, the site has two fronts. And due to this, front yard parking is a practical and functional necessity, whether it be off of Ravine or Fox. Allowing for required parking off of Fox allows for improved safety and function over any parking that would be off of Ravine. Additionally, parking off of Ravine not only would have reduced safety, it also would require a curb cut that would reduce parking availability to neighboring properties, many of which do not have off-street parking. I would also like to note that allowing for parking off of Fox harms or hurts no one in any way, as Fox is already used in such a manner, with numerous adjacent properties having front yard parking along that street. And the last item of this I would like to note is, for this request is that the proposed location fits without any exception to the Hillside Development Guideline number 27, which reads, provide parking on the uphill side behind buildings. The graphic provided in the guidelines, which was presented in the last hearing, matches identically to our proposed location and design. Thank you for time and consideration, and I'd like to turn remaining time over to the owner for brief remarks.
I just want to reiterate Jeremy's sentiment. I'd like you guys to strongly consider the benefits of parking off of Fox Street for both the neighbors as well as myself, the property owner. I've been living on Ravine Street for the past 4 years. Since then, there's been a substantial increase. Anyone who lives in Clifton would know because of the growth of the University of Cincinnati. As a result, there's just parking is an immense challenge. Last year alone, Ravine Street was shut down on 4 separate occasions due to snow emergency, which eliminated parking access for any of those who parked off of Ravine or on Ravine. Parking off of Fox will allow preferable access to myself. It's a much quieter road. Julie can attest to that or whatever. And it would take a much needed parking, and it would avoid a curb cut, taking a much needed parking space away from those who park off street on Ravine. In addition, I believe parking access off of Ravine will help clean up an area, a part of the street that has become parking access off of Fox will help clean up a part of the street that has become a dumping ground. If you notice the area, people are dumping their trash. They're crazy, parking illegally. So by having someone who's always there accessing it and keeping it maintained, there'll be less of an incentive for those to dump their trash and park illegally. Thank you.
Just a couple of quick questions for you guys before we get into public
Yes.
comment. You mentioned that this reduces fire risk.
It does,
uh,
yes,
this
substantially.
design. Okay, and you said that you had some communication with fire experts about this?
Yeah, so we, this issue was brought up and had conversations with Captain Hart. Those conversations are ongoing. I also reached out and discussed it with a state fire marshal code enforcement official. I've had a relationship in previous projects. And his position was basically that as long as there was access based on proximity on distance, and there is, because the code requires less than 150 feet for access and to reach all parts of the property. That not having the facility essentially, the building down between the two older homes, what you have is a distance between the two older homes of, on one side, approximately 4 feet, which is the required setbacks a little bit less than. And on the other side, based on how far it's set back, I think it's about 10 feet or so. That distance obviously is significantly more risk than approximately 60 feet away. So fire spread from one structure to the next would significantly reduce. And those are old homes. They're built, 1800, late 1800s. And they don't have modern fire protection. They don't have fire separation materials, our fire rated materials on their exterior. And so fire jumping and spreading from one to the next would be substantially increased in terms of risk versus the home team where we're proposing it.
Okay. And do you have documentation from either Captain Hart or this other individual?
No, the conversation with Captain Hart was a phone call and an email. Like I said, that conversation is ongoing. One thing he did ask for, or we were in discussion with on this design, because of its location, was potentially including a sprinkler system in it, which is not required by code. But we would concede to that to mitigate their risk in terms of access, because that was a question, although there's hydrants within 25 feet of both the front or east and west boundaries of the property. The code we were discussing essentially didn't apply to the project because it's public streets, not access roads. So it's a difficult site. So we're discussing a lot of things. So that conversation is ongoing. And but it's basically an open conversation to find an agreement on what would work the best on protection for everyone involved.
Got it. Okay. And I know that you went into this quite a bit in the initial hearing on how following the code would negatively impact adjacent property owners.
Correct. Yes.
Could you summarize that for me?
Yeah, it was about a 10-page presentation.
Yeah, not the entire presentation. In particular, I wanted you to
Yeah, so I
negative
touched on it a little bit. So first, as we noted, today as well, placing a structure in between the two current structures. The south side, and we submitted images before, the south side of the northern adjacent property has a significant number of windows on it. Yeah, you can see right there. And there's even windows on the northern side of the south property as well. Placing a home in that location at the maximum allowed height of 35 feet, going up the hillside, would basically eliminate all sunlight access into those windows. It would create essentially a stagnant air location, so wind access or open air access. Any views from those windows, even out onto what we're planning on landscaping and making a nice area, basically would be completely destroyed. So all of that would negatively impact that northern property by putting a home there. Another one would be the cutting into the hillside on the lower portion of that site. And this also goes with the extreme increasing cost to my client. But cutting into that lower portion of the hillside would require a significant amount more of structural stabilization from a geotechnical standpoint. And it puts substantial risk to any of the other surrounding properties. Another one would be by creating the narrow, almost cavernous-like spaces between those homes, you create a situation for blight. As you can see, right now, the property is kind of a, actually, it's much better condition. That's
Yeah, much
taken care of,
cleaner.
yeah. But
It's a 2-year
you do run the risk of having basically areas where people could hide. Like I said, the required distance, setback distance from the south property is only 3 feet 11 inches. So a 3 foot 11 space, 35 feet tall and long, creates essentially a very cavern location. People in that area could hide from a crime standpoint, reduce safety to both neighbors and people walking up and down that street, dumping ground area for people to throw trash, et cetera. You actually can see some of that if you just walk up and down the street in areas where the homes are closer together. See, I'm gonna go refer back to my notes, previous notes, and I can discuss some other ones as well. Let's see here. And I believe I submitted these as a written statement the last time as well, so it would be fairly easy to go back to them and refer back to them if you'd like.
No, I think I can actually go back.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to spend, another half hour, whatever.
We covered a lot last
Sure,
presentation, cognizant of everybody's time.
Sure, and I will certainly, before issuing a decision on this, I'll be reviewing the full transcript from the last hearing. So anything else right now before we get into public comment that you guys would like to say about the project?
I don't believe so. I think we wanted to keep it kind of short and sweet today.
Just the parking, we'd like to have that considered separate no matter what decision
Overall, correct.
overall.
Gotcha, okay. I understand what you mean. Okay, great. So let's go ahead, Walt, since you do have a time restriction, let's go ahead and have you testify first.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of things. You had the one picture up there just recently, the street view. He was talking about obstructing the light and air. The building directly to the left would be an exact replica of what would happen if you did build an infill house there. So you can see there is ample light and air on that parcel. So just to refer to that.
The house to the north?
Yeah, to the north. It would be located essentially the same as that one.
Gotcha, okay.
So the fire comments, I did send that email to you that I received from Captain Hart this morning. He did respond to that, did say that his judgment of the code was incorrect and that he was still staying with his interpretation of the code. The comment from the state fire marshal said that based on his comments and how he explained that this was going to be built, located, he saw no issues, but he did not see any plans. So without a proper set of plans to review, it would be hard for him to actually give a good recommendation from the state fire marshal.
And that's all in an email correspondence?
Yeah, that I sent you this morning
Okay, thank you.
from Captain Hart that I received. One of the things that we did, he brought up about the sightlines. The document that I sent and included in the staff report that shows the sightlines. That is how we look at sightlines and measure sightlines. So you can see on that drawing that the sightlines from the house behind is extremely, it's strong right here.
That's in the staff report?
It's on page 10. So sight lines from sitting on their patio and from their upper window will be obstructed entirely.
Okay, let me see if I can show this. So that's. Sandra, can you see staff report?
Yes. Yep.
What about now?
No, just see a white car.
Okay, hold on.
I can see it now.
I think I know what it is. You see the blue screen, Cassandra?
Yep. Blue screen. Staff report.
Thank you.
And that is actually the way that we would look at the sight lines based on the property. You follow the topography of the existing site along with the existing residence at the bottom. So as you can see, if you're looking over the residence at where this house should properly be located, he would have a sight line down into the valley. With it placed up where it is, the sight line is obstructed 100%.
Gotcha. You're talking about this.
That residence up there, which is directly behind where the new residence that he's proposing is to be built.
Okay.
He's used this term several times, arbitrary decision and arbitrary placement. These are not arbitrary placements. This zoning code, the staff report refers to, was considered extremely important. This maximum building envelope is one of the only requirements in the standards of developing that has its own particular section defining on how you have to determine where the house is built. The rest of them are just saying you do averaging. It needs to have no more than 8-foot cut and fill. No explanation on how those things are to be done. The actual maximum building envelope is its own section. So it must have been very, very important when this was decided to be put into law in 2004. So it's not arbitrary. It is something that was considered, and it was put in there intentionally to be developed that way. So it is not arbitrary. His comments would be for a site that is not developed. If there was, it's not an infill, this is an infill. This section is specifically designed for infill homes.
You mean his comments would be for a site that's not?
If it was a hillside with nothing on it, the hillside review that he presented us would be appropriate. Because you would be developing all those standards as you move forward, because there is no existing residence. This is a hillside infill site, and that section is extremely important for infill sites, which is the reason why it's in the code. Other than that, I believe the staff report speaks for itself. We made a few minor changes, the two that you saw, and the explanation that I just gave about the maximum building envelope is in there also. And like I said, I did send you the email early this morning from Captain Hart. And we have discussed this with the applicant, or with the architect actually, for nearly 2 years now. And an email was sent to him on March 23rd of 2020, which I can give you a copy of if you'd like, that pretty much spells out all the requirements that he's trying to ask for an exemption for today. Staff believes, along with myself as part of that staff, that an appropriate built house could be placed in the right location. And it could have been achieved prior to this hearing. And that's all I have.
So your last statement there is that it would be possible to build a house on here, on this lot that complies with the code with minimal adverse effects.
Correct.
To the hillside.
Absolutely.
Okay.
David, can I ask Walt a question while he's here? I'm just curious. So as long as we are in what the code says, we're not going to have any further issues on developing here.
If you build it to meet all the requirements based on maximum building envelope location wise.
Yeah.
There'd probably be no issue. I have to review. I can't do a hypothetical. I would need a set of drawings showing me the new proposed location and proposed document.
But just, David, I have some concerns that no matter what we go with, we're not going to be able to build here.
So I can tell you from a zoning law perspective that if you meet the zoning code and you don't require a variance anywhere, strictly from a zoning perspective, we can't prevent you from building.
Absolutely.
Okay, I wanted just some clarification on that.
No, this is nothing personal. This is.
I know that.
In the way that it's done.
I understand that. I just, it's been a lot, on my end, and we've gone through a lot, and I know you have as well. So I just want to make sure that I can do something here.
Well, and like I stated before, this has been March 23rd and with several phone conversations, which would be considered hearsay here. It was recommended that this was just not an appropriate location for this. And the document on March 23rd states that.
Understood.
Okay. Anything else, Walt?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, I'll just sort of go left to right here. Let's,
I'd like
Eric?
to have Eric go prior because I think he has a meeting here.
Sure.
Yeah, I can go first, that's all right, thank you.
Hold up to you guys. No, I have no problem. Can you say your name one more time? For the
Yeah,
record?
the name is Eric Russo, Executive Director of the Hillside Trust. Hillside Trust is a nonprofit organization advocating for the thoughtful use and preservation of area hillsides in greater Cincinnati, northern Kentucky. I've been with the organization now for almost 32 years. I was contacted by Ryan back in early June following the May meeting. He wanted to discuss the project with me. So we met at my office on June the 10th and spent about 45 minutes to an hour going over the project. When Ryan was done with his presentation to me, I explained to him that the Hillside Trust would not support this project for the following reasons. I've got 7 points here. One, the building did not work with the profile or the slope of the hillside and instead worked against it. I noted that the mass actually looked like a tractor trailer that had jackknifed over the brow of the hill. Two, I noted that the building did not step up the hill consistent with its pre-existing counterparts as far as the street profile goes, and did not create a uniform building facade along Ravine Street itself. Thirdly, I noted that in being placed at the top of the hillside, that the building towered over the roofs of existing homes. Four, I noted that in being founded on stilts, that the building mass left a huge open space between its base floor and the hillside, another hillside design guideline violation. Number five, I explained that in all my years of being involved in hillside reviews with the city, from the original Hillside Overlay District, or at least the original Environmental Quality District legislation, to the current Hillside Overlay District, that I can never recall the city ever denying an applicant permission to build. This is the first time I've witnessed actually the city saying, no, this cannot be done, and the applicant still coming to a hearing in the first place. Usually the city will support development, and you have opponents that come out to say that these are the concerns we have. So this is the first for me to witness that the city staff did not back this up. Number six, I noted that while container housing is slowly gaining popularity in Cincinnati, that in the Cuff district here, it may not work readily due to the context of the neighborhood, being that this is an infill lot and it would not really work within the context of the existing homes. I did note that some neighborhoods, I believe in South and or North Fairmount, where there's more open hillside, this was being explored, but there would be a more difficult solution here within Clifton. That said, I did let Ryan know that there might be the possibility if he were to bring that container down to the bottom of the hill, place one unit parallel to the street, another one on top of perpendicular to the hillside, that design solution may in fact work as it keeps the facade along the street. In closing, Ryan thanked me for my time and expressed the disappointment that he would not receive my support, but he indicated that he had spent enough time and money on this application that he was going to probably give it a rest for maybe a couple of years before he came back with a new application. So long story short, there was nothing we found in this application that worked from a design standpoint in terms of fitting within the hillside design guidelines, and strongly encourage Ryan to go back with a different design solution. And that concludes my comments.
Okay. Would you like to go? Ms. Hall?
I sent some photos to you last night of the property in question. I am the property owner on the north side. So I am the property owner on Ravine Street directly north. I do not, when the comments that I sent to you last night, I'm just going to go over them. The first thing is his plans show that he's putting the footer on my property. It goes across the property line. He is, not only is his footer going onto my property, he has the whole hillside from left to right dug out to support those footers, to put a base to put those footers on. So he's actually digging a deep, long trench horizontally across the hillside. In addition to digging that, he's also has to run sewer and water and gas line. And those currently on his plans show him receiving that from Ravine Street. His plans also show that his downspouts are dumping directly on the hillside. They're not dumping into the sewer system. And that's exactly what his plans say. And I sent you screenshots of his plans.
Is this in the PowerPoint?
I sent you emails and I screenshotted the different photos. So this hillside is very unstable at top. If you remember from the last, they acknowledged that it's a critical for a catastrophic failure at the top. And that's where they want to build. One of my concerns is if they build at the top, they could just collapse the whole side of the hill and with this weight and the machinery that they're using. I sent some photos that show the washout that's currently going on the hillside. They have big plastic tarps going across the hillside to hold back the soil right now, because the person who did the demolition they tore out all the trees, they tore out all the stumps. It created a failure on my retaining wall. They have 2 retaining walls that have collapsed on their property that they have not repaired or replaced. And so they have all this soil going down. They have these big black tarps going across to hold back the land from going down the hill. And even with that, there's rocks and everything that have washed out and washed down the hillside. And there's a photo of this on there that I took just yesterday. So you could see this washout and you could see the damage to where they've dug out the land. And it's created an exposure of not only I have a little patio out there on the top, but it's also exposed the foundation on my neighbor's property down below.
Are you referring to this?
I think that is, that's from Kelly. Mine would be from apartments at UC.
Okay.
It's sent directly to you.
Oh, okay.
Lots of photos.
There's a bunch.
Yeah, lots of photos for your review. If you want to pull them up, you can click through them quickly if you'd like. And I can, so what you're looking at right now is these are magical trees on the drawings that move from place to place depending upon where they are, because these renderings that he's showing, there's 2 trees in there
So,
and they're blocking.
Ms. Hall, give me 1 second.
Sure.
I'm gonna go through these photos. And if you'd like to comment on the photos as we go through.
Okay, I'll try to be as brief as possible.
Okay.
Just let me know when you're ready for me. This was a photo that was given by the applicant. It shows 2 trees there. The 2 trees, if you look down below, it's flat. The land down at the bottom is flat. They have 2 trees in the design trying to hide the underneath of the property. This property goes out into, it's above the roof line of the properties on both sides. So from my windows, we're looking up at the underside. So we're looking at his sewer system, his plumbing, his downspouts, whatever, these retaining walls that have fallen, that have not been replaced. And if you look at the right side, there is the old existing retaining wall where he's now exposed the foundation. You can see how there's a little right angle there at the hill. That's where there was a stone foundation wall that went across and connected, yes. And that's been removed.
And on the record, that was not removed by myself. That wasn't in existence, and we have evidence that it never existed there.
So it's on their plans though. So, I mean,
And those are renderings, David.
I'll give you an opportunity, just make a note if you want to respond. to
Yeah,
anything.
sure.
And
So this
just-
one, the tree is moved underneath. And it's just showing that they're moving the trees so that this is from the street, the view that the people get from the street, which is the underside of his home, which would show the water lines, the gas lines, the sewer line, and he has to bring those down the ravine from what and those will go down, and he's got to again, dig further than if he had it down at the street.
Okay.
And it's digging in a critical area, which the street is not a critical area. This rendering is what they perceive. This is what they want. It's because of the view. The grass that you see, the ornamental grass, that is my property. They built this concrete wall barrier right to the property line. So I don't know if he's planning on cutting all my trees down and putting ornamental grass up, but that's my property. And this is what his vision is and why they're fighting for this versus down on the hill, because they want to be above everything. This is a view from the other side. Now there's 3 trees here, hiding the fact that I have a porch out there and that their building would shade and hide, you know, the porch, and it would be on top of actually. That his house would protrude out over the back of my building. So it's about approximately 6 feet into my back, you know, coming towards the house. So when I look out my window, I would see, all I would see is his building on the underside of it. Which, you know, if you build on the street, the back windows, what I would view would be his backyard. This is an actual view photo of the property. So that gate there, that is where he has built a wall that he's proposing that, so that would be like standing in his parking lot where he wants to park his cars. So you can see that, you know, we are above the roof line, just standing there, and that this is a great slope. There's a stairwell that goes up and down through here, and it's at a 45-degree angle because the stairs go all the way from the bottom to the top, and they're, you know, they're regular 9-inch by 9-inch, you know, risers, and so it's a 45-degree angle. This shows at the last meeting, he stated that there are other buildings that are built off of Fox and that they would not be impeding the green beltway. And as you can see from this photo, no homes are built on the west side of Fox. And in fact, the only house built on the east side of Fox would be the one that's right there on the corner across the street from him. What you're looking at, this is an alley. And this alley, you're looking at the backyards of all the people who reside on Flora. So he wants to build in an alleyway on Fox, not on Ravine Street. And it's impeding the green beltway for animals and other things, which is important, you know, for their, to move around. So he would be the only house on Ravine Street to be built on Fox. And so it's setting a precedent besides just, you know, just building a house here. This just shows a further expanded view. The green beltway continues down in that area. What you see protruding out is there's a couple side streets called City View. It goes up a hill and
Can I
is
interrupt? I
connected.
apologize. We were not privy to any of this before this hearing. I'd asked that it not be shown and be struck from the record. It was not submitted and given to us to respond to or have beforehand as it's supposed to.
I received these late last night.
Yeah, and I understand that, but we were not given access to these, and I was under the impression anything to be considered in this hearing visual needed to be presented or given 48 hours prior to.
Right. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna allow her to testify using these images. I am not going to include them as an official part of the record, but I will allow her to use them as a demonstrative as she gives her testimony.
Understood.
Okay.
And this is just another, except it's expanded out. And as you can see, the green beltway continues down the entire area of Ravine Street. And the only difference, the only things he was explaining in the last meeting, that there's other houses that are built off of Ravine. Those are side streets. That's Renner down at Over the Rhine at the bottom there. And then, of course, City View. So no one on Ravine is built back on the back of their lot. There's not one house. This is the house that Ryan currently lives in next door on the other side. As you can see, there's 3 retaining walls, just to show the steepness of it. And that's just the front, that's the front on the right side. So that'd be the south side. And this is a photo, expanded view of his lot. You can see the black tarps going across to hold back the land. And you can see how there's rocks and items that have fallen down the hill. And then you can see the stairs at the top showing the 45-degree angle. And then at the very, very top where there's graffiti and you can see blue, that's where his wall that he proposes to attach to the, and on the left-hand side of that photo, that's my property. And you can see the crack in my retaining wall that I have had tuck pointed. When he had bulldozers come pull the stumps and the trees that were on his property off, he cracked my retaining wall and I had to have someone come in and tuck point it. This is the just an expanded view, same thing. There's the water wash out of the rocks at the bottom, and then down below, yeah, see all the rocks that have come down the hill from washout, and there's a big washout. There's the tarp that's supposed to hold back. There's rocks there from the fallen retaining wall, and on the left where you see that pipe, that's where there was a fallen retaining wall, and you can see all the rocks on the ground right there. And then the stairwell that goes up, everyone has one of those in their backyard. This is just more, and this is where he tore out land, and there was a brick, I don't know what that is, but there was land there, and now that's all exposed. It's leaving my part of the hillside in a possible failure mode, and I'm very concerned about this. And there at the bottom there, that's where his retaining wall is, and you can see the rocks at the bottom from the washout from rain. And this is just another of the repair work I had to do. And you can see the brick wall falling in from where he exposed it.
Would you like me to keep going? Are there more pictures in particular that you would like to?
Yeah, we can keep going. But I don't need to comment. This just shows when he first did the digging, or and a problem with this is he applied to have this resloped. The city said no, and he did it anyway. And that is really disturbing to me that he's dug this stuff out, and he rescinded his, request for it.
This claim is false.
So
I did not apply for anything like that. And we didn't remove the retaining.
It's on the cages if you want to look at it.
So, again, if you could, make a note. I'd
Yeah.
like for you to save those arguments for rebuttal. It just helps the argument run a bit, or helps the meeting run a bit more smoothly that way.
It's on the cages that he requested this, and that after he did not get approval, he pulled it. This just shows the sewer and the sewer going tapping into Ravine Street. And it shows that he wants to regrade it, and he wants to regrade the hillside. You know, and then put up a silt fence while the construction, because of the, you know, the erosion of the land, which is, you know, similar to what is going on right now and the problem that's going on right now. And these are all from his drawings. So these have already been submitted.
Okay, all right.
And this is, he came to community council, and he, here he stated that he wanted one parking space. He went to the community council requesting, telling them, maybe two.
Any of the pictures in particular that you'd like to pull up?
Yeah, the pictures are not really, more it's about the plans. The plans show that he's putting the footer, it's going to be on my property. He's building this right up against the property lines. It's also, it shows that the utilities, I don't know if it shows them coming from Ravine Street. It shows the downspouts dropping right, you know, exposed right into onto the ground at the property. And all I've done is I've taken the information from here and I've copied it here so that you don't have to look for it. But, you know, looking at the bottom side of someone's mechanicals, their gas lines, you know, all their mechanicals for the property, and looking at the bottom of their house is just not something that I think is of value to the neighborhood. And I don't think that I am 100%. They said that the being built at the bottom of the hill would be a negative impact to our property. I disagree. I would 100% support his second alternative, which he did put in an alternative of building a house at Ravine Street. And I would be in support of him building his home on Ravine Street. And it would not impede our view. It would not block any of the things that he's saying. And I'm the owner, and I support that. And as far as the fire department goes, you know, every single house on that street has the same distance between the homes. And we have never lost a home on Ravine to a fire. I've been there since 1988. And we've not had one burned down. But we have lost homes to Hillside loss. So that's something that has occurred, and that's something that concerns me greatly because insurance doesn't cover it. So if he builds his house and it fails, the Hillside, we have to go after him directly because insurance does not cover it. And we have to go after the architect and the geotech and everybody else. And, you know, and that's, I mean, Ryan, like as he has stated, doesn't have the funds to financially support the purchase or the building of a house like the ones that are there.
You said that you would have to look at some of these utility lines underneath the house.
Correct.
Are there plans or pictures or drawings?
They're in his drawings. There's no pictures. When he did the renderings, there's also these cross beams that that he's got it all anchored and tied together. Those aren't showing on his renderings at all either. But if you look at the engineering reports, on the engineering reports, they have these cross braces from one of the from the I-beams connected up down to the piers, and with bolts on them to tighten them so that they don't collapse, you know, and they don't spread apart and the building falls, you know. And so, you know, it's held together with wires. So there's wires going across, there's pipes. One of the drawings shows like a chute, a tunnel, I'm assuming because they don't want their water lines to freeze, that they have, you know, in some kind of siding that goes straight up and down. And, but all of that is, you know, in the downspouts coming down. It's just, it's not, in my opinion, well thought out. And it's not, it's just not it's not visually appealing to anyone in the neighborhood. at all, from top to bottom.
All right, anything else?
That's really it. And then the landscaping in his I don't like the renderings at all because he's moved trees to hide what he's doing. So one rendering has the trees one place, one has it the other. He has landscaping on my property. Even on the front cover of his proposal has him landscaping both mine and the other neighbor's property. And his property line is literally, he's put this retaining wall, it's less than 6 inches from the property line. And I don't know about setbacks and how they are for builds, but I'm assuming that his build needs to be set back from a property line. And I don't see that occurring here.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Linda Ziegler. Ms. Ziegler, if you wouldn't mind, just you could restate your name.
Yeah, I'm Linda Ziegler. I'm here from the Cuff Neighborhood Association. I'm a board member.
Okay.
Well, we were contacted by the owner and some of the neighbors of this proposed property. So they came to our June 1st board meeting, and everybody presented all their drawings and proposals and whatnot. And we had an extensive, I think it went over an hour or more, discussion back and forth with the proposals and for and against. After we reviewed everything, we voted to support the findings of Mr. Moeller, and we are not in favor of the zoning or building variances. Cuff has always supported the existing zoning and building codes. And, you know, we would like to have infill done. We would like to encourage homeowners. This looks like a great project, but not in this place. So we are, you know, not in favor of it proceeding.
Okay.
And I don't know if you received this letter or not, but this was what was sent from the community council.
Okay. You all had a chance to review the,
Yes.
Yeah,
I have not, I don't have
received
that,
it.
but that's okay.
would you like to review them?
That's all right. If Ryan's
Yeah.
reviewed it, that's fine. I had not received it.
Reviewed it. Okay, we'll add this to the record. Thank you. All right, so I think we have one more member of the public joining us via Zoom that would like to testify. And Ms. Ambrosius, am I saying that right?
Yes, and actually, I think you have one more person who came on late, John Moore. John, are you still there?
Yeah, I trying to make contact with them earlier. Mr. Moore, are you?
I'm here.
Mr. Moore, do you plan on providing testimony here today?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to let Ms. Ambrosius go first. Then I'll give you an.
You ready?
No.
Okay, well,
Sir,
yes.
I apologize for interrupting.
Mr. Moore? Okay, Mr. Moore, when you do want to testify,
Yes.
we'll need you to activate your camera. It's not going to be
Yes.
right now. Ms. Ambrosius is going to go first. I just want to give you a heads up, just in case you need to change anything before appearing on camera. Okay, and I'll come back to you as soon as Ms. Ambrosius is done.
I was just going to say that you would need to be on camera, and he didn't come in under oath either, so that needs to be done.
Sure.
If he wants to testify.
Sure, thank you for that reminder. Okay, Ms. Ambrosius, floor is yours.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm unmuted.
You are?
Okay, so first of all, we also weren't privy to any updates from the architect or the owner within 48 hours. So I'm just putting that on record as well, since they have, I guess, a complaint that they didn't receive our information. And then second, what it seems to me is that the owner has property at 2228 Ravine Street, but he doesn't want to build on 228 Ravine Street. He wants to build on Fox, My question is, why? Why do you not want to build on 228 Ravine as everyone is suggesting and supporting? Am I allowed to ask the question, or is that rhetorical?
Can I answer it? If she
I'll-
wants to answer it, I can answer that.
I'd like the owner to answer.
Sure.
It's economically infeasible. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you, because I just never heard a reason why, so I appreciate that. So I'm just going to go, I wrote down as people were talking questions, so these may be a little bit out of order, but that's kind of how my mind works. Since I'm on Zoom, I'm seeing basically all of you. Do you have a picture of the new container house in regards to the neighboring residents with the new height changes?
You mean a rendering?
Yes.
Yes, we've seen a few of those today, yes. We have-
Can I see one? Because I wasn't able to see one.
I think she's talking
She's,
about with the
yeah,
lowered height.
she's referring to the lowered height. It was a
Yes.
Kelly, it was a diagram showing from an elevation standpoint, not a 3D rendering.
Oh,
Showing
okay.
that we lowered the height by almost 3 feet. So
Okay, thank you. I just thought I
that
was
was,
missing.
and that was submitted
missing out.
to the city over a month ago, so I apologize for you not getting that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Okay, so fire possibilities, I was going to say, but Linda kind of addressed it. All row houses have the same dimensions between houses. So the risk of fire by proximity of houses, that's just kind of a standard. To me, the house on Fox Street would be in vegetation, so there would be a higher risk of fire just because of setting the landscape, the vegetation on fire. I also contacted the fire department. I haven't heard back because my concern wasn't with the house fire system, but it was with getting emergency vehicle equipment down Fox if the parking that is proposed goes directly to the curb. So again, I have not heard back on that. Okay, parking on Fox. Parking on Fox would bring extra noise and pollution. It's going to lead to illegal parking. Ms. Hall has property at 2230 Fox. She's got a little bit of vegetation there that would be just crushed because people would start parking illegally. Because I call all the time on Fox Street when people park illegally. And I've actually talked to the illegal parkers and the police, and the parkers say, well, we've seen one car there, so we thought it was okay. So I think that's just going to lead to just a lot of illegal parking, which will prevent emergency vehicles from getting down Fox. The second part of the parking is there is no front yard parking on Fox. There is no precedent for it. The house on Flora Street at 2237, they have a garage in back of the house that's on Fox, but it's on the back of the house. My house is on 2241 Flora Street. We have a driveway that goes out on Fox that is on the side of the house. I sent you pictures, I believe, of the front yard parking that was presented in the original presentation back in May. Those houses are all backyard parking. Those houses are not on Fox. Those houses are on Flora. So they have parking on Fox, but it's backyard parking. Okay, so my question is the new container house facing Fox, or is the back going to face Fox?
Kelly,
Since I didn't.
it's the same thing, just shorter.
Okay, so, okay, that's just what I needed there. Thank you. And then my last point, and this is the original concern, and Joanne Hall brought this up also, is the hillside stability. My property has moved in the last 3 years. We have a shed in the back corner of our property, and the shed actually went cattywampus because there's a shift in the soil. So if you are looking at a container house, the weight of the container, the weight of the piers, you have to have paved parking according to the city if you have parking. So you've got added asphalt or concrete, you've got the weight of vehicles. That is going to create a hillside, and I don't want my house to be on Ravine Street. And then finally, I reached out to the civil engineer group, Civil Solutions, that did the soil report back in May 2018, just because it was brought up at the CUF board meeting that they supported a build on Fox. they make soil recommendations. I talked to Andrew Lageman, I think is how you pronounce it. And he said, it's up to the city and the zoning commission to decide where to build. They just tell you what to do with the soil when you want to build. He said it's out of their scope to say, this is where you should build. Okay, so again, I do support the build on 2228 Ravine Street side because I think that's ideal. That's where the property is. I don't support a build on Fox Street. There's nothing that is good to it. It doesn't go in with the architecture. It's going to create more noise in the neighborhood. The hillside is going to be unstable. So, all right, you have my opinion and I appreciate that. Thank you for your time and thank you for allowing me to Zoom because I have a respiratory condition, so it's hard for me to get out in this weather.
Thank you, Ms. Ambrosio. Thanks for your testimony and your time today. Okay, Mr. Moore,
Yes,
where are you with us? Mr. Moore, can you activate your camera?
I'm sorry. Yeah, is it, can you see me?
No.
Now?
Yes. I can see you now.
Okay. I'm the property owner.
Mr. Moore, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Can you
I'm
raise
the
your right
property.
hand? Mr. Moore, can you stop talking? I need you to raise your right hand and unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole, truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to tell
I
us
live
more?
at, okay, I live on the corner house, which is 8 Fox Street. When I step out, just to reiterate Kelly's point, which she touched on a lot of what I had to say. When I step out onto my porch, I've lived here for 20 years, and the only thing I'm used to seeing is the park, which I can see the park across from Ravine, and trees. So to have a house and a mini parking lot across from my house when I step out on my porch just to sit down or whatever, after 20 years is different, shall I say. I also feel that with big box construction thing on the hillside, I think, like Kelly said, it's going to be more illegal parking. They're going to be parking against my wall, which I have a wall that goes around the corner of my house, and more trash. So, you know, I've seen a lot of things in 20 years because this is kind of like a little isolated little alley thing. But with me being on the corner, of course, I see a lot of stuff. So that's basically all I have to say. I would say to move it down on Ravine Street is perfect, but I actually would prefer not to see it up so close to me because I do think it will be an eyesore. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Appreciate your testimony.
You're welcome.
Okay. I think that we're ready to move into any rebuttal. So this is your opportunity, gentlemen, to respond to any of the arguments or testimony from anyone from the public or Mr. Moore.
Sure. We'll try to be very quick. I'll just try to go point by point. Mr. Moeller indicated a view sunlight access based on picture. Unfortunately, the house that he's referring to would be significantly shorter than the maximum building envelope that we can build to, which is 35 feet. The current height is about 25 feet. Actually, it's about 20 feet on the upper hillside. So increase that height by about 15 feet. And you would start to see sunlight blocking and view access blocking on all the south windows of Ms. Hall's home. The fire issue with regards to communication with the fire department, I had no idea that Mr. Moeller was in contact with Captain Hart. I've not seen any response or what he may or may not have sent you. So I just wanted to clarify based on my testimony, I was basing that on what I knew at the time. Sight lines. Let's see. Just wanted to reiterate that their look at sight lines is purely from a elevational standpoint. It doesn't account for horizontal consideration and location. When you're thinking in sight lines, you have to think in 3D, not 2D. And my reference to arbitrary and my presentation is that it is a calculation. It is by definition arbitrary. It doesn't have any context or consideration for everything surrounding it. And as referring back to our previous presentation, we went into great lengths and detail with regards to the Cincinnati Hillside Development Guidelines. Moving to Ms. Hall's comments, nothing of our design is on her property at all in any way, shape, or form. You can see this by looking at the property lines, boundary lines, the survey, and where the drawings are. And so just want to be very clear about that. As far as sewer, water,
Actually, what about the renderings? I think that was.
the renderings don't show anything on her property at all either. So the renderings are done by 3D model, and those are based off all of the exact survey development that we received from our surveyors, extruded accordingly in 3D, and then shown as far as being rendered. Same thing with the trees. She talked about them moving around. There are the number of trees that we show in our actual site plan are in the renderings, and just when you move perspectives, that's the way they showed up. Nothing, when you develop something in 3D, you're not going to go around and move things, to re-render them. Let's see, as far as sewer, water access, etc., we have two options. We either can go to Fox or we can go to Ravine with that. That becomes a cost issue more than anything. We do have access to Fox, which would be easiest for a sewer. We showed it going to Ravine as the initial design. As far as the visual of the underside of the design, that is actually clad in a wood soffit, so everything is hidden. And then the sewer line would actually either move back to the existing wall and turn down into the hillside to either go to Fox or to Ravine, or would have a vertical chase built that would also be clad in the same wood siding as the design. It would not be exposed in any way, shape, or form. Let's see, stormwater issue. As far as the stormwater coming from the home, it would be very minimal. That was actually thought through and worked through with stormwater management. We have rain chains coming down for the very minimal stormwater that be coming off the house, because we have a roof garden, a vegetated roof on it that actually would contain most stormwater on the house and then allow it to evapotranspire into the surrounding environment instead of run onto the hillside. Again, we had significant conversations with stormwater management on how that would be developed. The black tarp she's referring to is what's called a silt fence. It is required in construction. It's required on our plans in terms of design and to make sure that we do not have any erosion and runoff onto other properties as far as silt is concerned. The landslide issue. With regards to the landslide issue, the lower level of the site is the less stable portion of the site, the upper side, hillside, and you can see this in the Cincinnati Hillside Development Guidelines. It calls this out as well. And we would also prefer that with regards to Kelly and Joanne, they're not subject matter experts in this. However, you've had a structural engineer, a geotechnical engineer, and myself work extensively on this design to find the most appropriate location from a structural stability and geotechnical standpoint. Ryan can attest to this, but we have dug nothing out on the lower side of the site. The only thing that has been dug out at all has been test pits for the geotechnical report. That earth was replaced after it was dug out. Let's see. She talked about projection of the design over her property. If you look at the plans for it, you can see that the edge of it does not even engage the rear of the other homes. So that is not feasible for it to actually go over her property. There are no actual stairs in place on the site right now. There are old broken concrete stairs, which you saw in the renderings. They don't actually go anywhere. There's just a small section left over. With regards to both Ms. Hall and Ms. Ambrosia's testimony with regards to Fox, Fox is not an alley. It is a street. And because of that, when you refer to front yards, as far as zoning is concerned, it is considered a front yard property. That also goes for the parking that are houses that their fronts may seemingly be on Flora, but in fact, they have fronts on both Flora and Fox. So their parking that is along Fox is not backyard parking, it is front yard parking. If it were backyard parking, then my client would not be having to request this variance for parking off of Fox. He could just do it because you would be allowed to have rear yard parking. Let's see. The statement by Ms. Hall, as far as having to apply to have the site re-sloped, is not accurate. It's completely false. There might have been a permit submitted request by the previous owner for that. I'm not completely sure, but nothing, and we have not done anything of the like. And the only permit that was submitted for prior to this application was for the retaining wall, which was approved and was built according to the code. She then refers to the cross bracing on the design for the structure. That cross bracing is lateral cable bracing. It is necessary from a structural design. All houses, all buildings have lateral bracing. It is in the renderings, and it was done with cables so that it is visually less apparent. The other alternative would have been to do with what's called heavy steel or steel angles, which would be much, much more visible. And that was at a higher cost to my client so that we could keep that more appealing for the surrounding neighborhood and less apparent.
So let me ask you while we're on that point.
Yes.
Most homes have lateral bracing.
All buildings have lateral bracing, yes.
But how often are neighbors forced to look at that lateral bracing?
As far as lateral bracing, I mean, it really just depends on where you are. I mean, it really depends on the design. I mean, it becomes an aesthetic question, which quite honestly, we're not really debating here, and which I understand. The lateral bracing is a case of a requirement. Any home has that, any building has that. The building we're sitting in has it. It's just whether you're aware of it, know that it's there. I mean, I could go point out the lateral bracing in this building.
No, I'm kind of getting, I mean, really, I want to hear the argument, and I know that you have outlined this in the original testimony quite a bit, but I do want to hear the argument for how this fits contextually.
Sure. So from a design standpoint, from a design standpoint, we actually wanted to, and this actually goes with, if you give me a moment, I can actually, don't mentally remember the exact Hillside guideline. So if you give me a moment, I will find it. Okay, so we're referring to, I believe it's guideline number 17 and number 36. It talks about expressing verticality in the areas of development. We express this in the idea of a tree-like structure, essentially trying to mimic the trees on the surrounding sites, the vegetation, and the structure itself being within the canopy of the trees. And then using essentially the dark colored paint on the structure itself to mimic the tree bark, moving on up to the wood-bound structure, clad structure, mimicking essentially the canopy. The colors of the house would then reflect through seasons and the weathering process of the wood, essentially that tree-like structure and that verticality. So it's essentially trying to fit with the actual hillside itself and the vegetation of the actual hillside, and then putting what other houses look like there, which are completely apparent to not being anything like the vegetation of the hillside. So that was the intent from an aesthetic standpoint with the house. That is all written in our previous presentation, referring to the various guidelines that we considered when developing it.
You think about it hidden in there, and that's why I know it's a container home. That's why we've got the wood facade on there, and that was the vision for it.
Moving on to try to be very quick here with regards to Ms. Ambrosia's comments, there's actually a hydrant on the corner of Fox where it churns from north-south to east-west. That essentially shows that there would be access for emergency vehicles. So I just wanted to note that. A fire hydrant, to be clear. The parking that we are requesting would be landscaped as we've shown in our renderings. All the landscaping would be on my client's property. And so it would, as Ryan noted in our previous commentary, this would, where there are current issues of dumping, illegal parking, things like this would actually help that, because you'd be there constantly maintaining it, making sure it is in appropriate care, et cetera. So the idea of where current people just dump trash and the various things up in that corner in that area, you would actually have somebody trying to take care of that. With regards to the Fox and front yard parking, we've already submitted pictures that there's parking all along Fox on those areas. Again, that is by code defined as front yard parking. So it is already there. And then the last thing I would like to address is the hearsay with regards to Mr. Legman. One, Mr. Legman was not the primary geotechnical that worked on this project. It was one of his associates, Kelly Reichert. And so Mr. Legman would not be fully with understanding of this project. And it sounds like by his testimony and Ms. Ambrosia's statement of his comments to her, he was not referring to, from a geotechnical standpoint with regards to zoning, he was referring to the actual zoning code. No, a geotechnical engineer would not be making commentary on where someone should or should not build with regards to zoning code. So that makes, in context, would make perfect sense. And that is the last of what I have to say in rebuttal. Ryan, do you have anything?
No.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Sure. And now would be the time if you had anything else in closing or otherwise that you wanted to share. You do have an opportunity for closing statements, but if you'd like that rebuttal of service.
I think the only thing would be to, again, we would like to reiterate, consider the two requests for relief as separate from one another, not in combination. And that would be the only consideration that we would like to make in the closing statement.
Sure, meaning that you would like me to consider approving one and not the other.
Correct. If you deny one,
all or nothing.
correct.
That's
Yes.
typically how.
We just want to make sure that's very clear that we would like it to be considered in that way.
Sure.
Thank you.
And that's typically how I'll approach it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we'll leave it at that then. I want to thank everyone here for their time and their testimony and for coming out today and for being with us on Zoom. So I'm going to take this under advisement. As I said in the beginning of the hearing, these usually take 2 weeks. Sometimes they take a little bit longer than that. And so in the meantime, while we're waiting, if you have any questions that come up or you'd like an update on the status of the decision, feel free to reach out to myself.
Okay.
Or Ms. Manus, and we can give you an update on that. As soon as I finish these decisions, I put them into a PDF and I send them out to everyone who's attended the hearing. So everyone will have a copy of my decision just moments after it's finished. And I think that's it. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Ms. Ambrosius, do you have a question right now?
Yeah, sorry. One question that I forgot to ask because the property owner brought it up. So if they need,
Ambrosius, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't clear earlier. But you only have one opportunity to speak, and at this point, we are adjourned. So I'm not going to.
oh, okay, sorry. I'll send you an email.
That's not the subject matter. If you have a question about procedure, you can ask it now or send an email.
I'll
But
send you an email.
in terms of subject matter, I won't be accepting any more testimony. So,
Okay,
thank you.
got it.
Sure. Okay.
I do have a question about procedure.
Sure, yes.
If someone gave testimony under oath that is either inaccurate or purposely inaccurate, what is the procedure for that?
So if I become aware that any testimony was inaccurate, then I just won't consider it.
Okay.
Or give it no weight. Yeah. But in terms of any sort of legal repercussions,
Sure.
I couldn't say.
Is there a certain person we address that to, or just directly to you, or?
I don't know. I can look into that and follow up with you.
Okay.
But yeah, I typically won't sort of adjudicate that sort of thing or
Sure.
get too deep into that. The sworn testimony is something that's a requirement of the code and a requirement that the courts have made us comply with to try to encourage honest testimony. But I'm not sure that I have any sort of perjury powers or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not expecting that, but just, is there a process to point out contradictions in prior hearing versus this hearing?
There is none, unfortunately. not.
So if somebody says it's black today and white tomorrow,
That's something that you'll have to trust that I recognize.
Gotcha.
If it's not something that's been pointed out on the record during your comments.
okay,
Yeah, so,
it's okay.
sure.
Good to know. Good to
Yeah,
know.
any other questions?
That was it, really.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, well, thank you all again and hope you have a wonderful day. We are adjourned.
Thank you very much.